Wishing you a coolest good afternoon to one and all in this winter season. Hope you enjoyed the first session of induction program, Educational Research and Case Studies. Today is the second session of day 2 of this program on research paper writing and IP rights sponsored by AICTE New Delhi, organized by A.G. Patil Polytechnic Institute Solapur and in collaboration with ISTE New Delhi. On behalf of our institute, I, Devanshi Zaveri, lecturer in Mechanical Engineering Department, welcome today's speaker, Dr. Anita Divakar, IIT Bombay, Dr. M.H. Ogule, coordinator and principal of Polytechnic Wing, Mr. J.M. Jaketia, vice principal, and Mr. S.K. Mohite, head of Mechanical Engineering Department, my colleagues, and dear participants. It's a great privilege for me to introduce today's guest speaker on this occasion of AICTE ISTE induction program, Dr. Anita Divakar. Her topic is measuring effectiveness of educational research. Actually, she has a huge profile, but because of limitation of time, I read something little about her. She has completed her PhD in Educational Technology from IIT Bombay. The online scientific design of virtual lab experiments tool available at virtual labs is the part of outcome of her thesis. The tool helps users in designing effective virtual laboratory experiments. She had done master's and bachelor's in electronics engineering. She was ninth merit holder in higher secondary. It was her great achievement. She had been published many papers in international conferences and journals. She has attended and organized many workshops for engineering educators and students in the domain of design and development of virtual laboratory experiments. To her career strategy, she trained more than 6,000 engineering teachers and more than 5,000 engineering students from institutes from state of Maharashtra, Gujarat, Karnataka, Kerala, Uttar Pradesh, and Goa, and countries like Malaysia and Indonesia in design and development of virtual laboratories. Really marvelous, ma'am. She is a part of QET research group from IDP in Educational Technology, IIT Bombay. She has a vast 30 years of teaching experience in engineering education, 9 years in industry, and 10 years in research. She is a designated partner of AIEE Education Technology for the past 9 years, and she has trained students and teachers. Even she has designed and developed some industry application in the embedded system and Internet of Things domain with industry collaboration. She is a mentor of many well-known institutes as well as her holding membership of many reputed professional organizations. She has received Best Paper Award and GOLC Best Online Virtual Laboratory Award for 2020 of Educational Activities Committee IEEE Bombay section. She has her YouTube channel for educational videos in electronics engineering domain. Ma'am, really, we are excited to hear some valuable words from you because you are such a versatile and multi-talented personality. I request all participants to keep your microphones and videos off during the session. Without taking more time, I request our Honorable Ma'am to conduct a session on measuring effectiveness of educational research. Thank you.
So, thank you, Professor Devanshi, for such a wonderful introduction. So, I always say, I'm just a teacher, just like all of you. So, at the heart, I means considering all whatever you read,
So nice of you, ma'am.
uh, I consider myself a teacher first above everything else. So today I'm here thanks to your institute. So let me share my screen now. Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am, your screen is visible.
Okay, okay. So I will just put this on full screen, my presentation. So this is the topic that I will be, or maybe we will be interacting on, that is measuring effectiveness, right? So at the onset, I would like to thank Mr. Kulkarni, the training and placement officer at A.G. Patil Polytechnic Institute. It was because of his, so many efforts that he has put up. I think this FDP has come to light. And also thanks to Dr. Chaugule, principal of your Polytechnic, and the management of the Polytechnic for considering me for this particular session of the wonderful FDP. I think this is a very, very relevant topic that has been chosen for the faculty development program. And as it has been said in the National Education Policy document, the revised one 2020, it says that at the core of everything, at the core of education are the teachers, and empowering the teachers should be the first goal of the institute, because it is the teachers who are uh, taking lot of efforts, and they are at the heart of the institute. Obviously there are other things that matter, but at the top, what matters most are the people, and the teachers there, the students and the teachers. I would also like to acknowledge my head of department at educational technology here at IIT Bombay, Dr. Sridhar Iyer, then Professor Dr. Sahana Murthy Madam, and my colleagues Dr. Gargi, Dr. Samir, Dr. Mrinal, Dr. Kapil, Dr. Madhuri, Dr. Jayakrishnan, and Dr. Rekha, because all these are the people who have been, supportive, and those who have been, instrumental in bringing up whatever I am going to discuss today. So with this, I would like to share with you the few questions that we will be discussing today. We will be trying to find answer to these questions. So what is educational technology? What are the research methods in this domain? What are the metrics of a good ET research paper? And what are the research designs that we do in ET? And then what are the steps for writing an ET research paper? Because I believe if you consider a technology paper like the say mechanical engineering, I believe many of you are from mechanical, electrical, and other engineering domains. So writing a paper in those domains and writing a paper in educational technology domain or education as such, there is some difference. Although the basics, the foundations remain the same, there are certain things that we have to be very careful about when we write a ET research paper. So now going ahead, as I said, it is going to be an interaction. So I hope all of you are okay with this, because I am taking a session after lunch and I don't want to put all of you to sleep. I think this is the most difficult part of see, or even when we are in a physical meeting, I believe even in a face to face after lunch, it is very difficult to keep the eyes open. And this is being online, I am not sure how many of you I will be able to keep excited about the things that we are going to discuss together. Okay, so now I will be presenting this question to you. So what I want all of you to do is go to this website, that is menti.com, www.menti.com, and use this code, that is 39533368. So if you use this code, you will be seeing this particular question, that is, write the first word that comes to your mind when you think about educational technology. So is the question visible to everyone? Because when I am in full screen, I am not able to see the participants. So if you're not able to see, maybe. So as soon as I start getting the responses on the screen, you should be able to see the answers. So I'm sure most of you must have used this tool, online tool, that is the Mentimeter tool, which is available at menti.com for your online teaching learning. Because this online we have been doing since last so many months. I think it will be now 20, 21 months since we are doing this online. So is it visible? Are you able to respond to this question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I'll just give, say, 2 minutes for this question and then we will go ahead. Okay, skill acquired by student, knowledge, improvised, okay, technical skill, challenges are there, yes. Okay. So I got response from 5, 6, okay, technique, teaching learning, yeah, exactly. Any other word? Okay. So I can see response from 6 participants. Okay. So let me go ahead. I can see 43 participants, out of which, okay, I see some people have answered in the chat as well. Okay. So 10% I believe are going to interact in the session. Okay, good enough. So if you see, educational technology is a very, very huge domain. And recently it has received a lot of attention, a lot of funding, a lot of people are working in this domain, a lot of companies are coming up, and a lot of funding is being put into this particular area, that is educational technology. So what you are seeing on your screen is basically what is called as a concept map of this term, that is educational technology. So this domain covers instructional design, the 21st century skills, then the different learning media that are used, then what are the different businesses and industry related to educational technology, what is the requirement for leadership, and what are the social issues. So it's like, it's a huge, huge domain of knowledge where this educational technology is considered. And this, I believe, is just a small concept map. This can be even extended further if we keep on adding the newer things that are being developed in this domain, right? But at the core, there are two things that we say about educational technology. That is, it is technology for education and technology of education, that is the pedagogy. So there are two important pillars of educational technology, that is technology for education and technology of education. Now what do we mean by technology for education? So basically these are nothing but the external technologies, such as computers, internet, the various tools that we use for content creation, the instructional design, for creating simulations, visualizations, even the virtual labs, right? At the same time, the animations, videos, everything that is external to the teaching learning, I would say, the that comes as a technology for education. So this is basically, something which is acting as a facilitator of the teaching learning processes, or making the teaching learning processes better, right? So these technologies can be integrated into the teaching learning environment to aid the process of achieving any teaching learning goal. So at the heart of any teaching learning environment is the goal, and these are the technologies that we use for achieving those goals, right? And this is the picture which shows the evolution of the technology for education over a period of many decades. As you can see, in 1860s, that was the year, or that was the period when the formal education started all over the world. Like, people started going to schools. So when the students started going to schools, that time, the only technology available with the teacher used to be the blackboard and the chalk and the duster. That's it. Now slowly, over a period of years, if you see, lot of things had evolved, the technology has evolved, and naturally those technologies are being used for the education and teaching learning as well. So currently, I would say that the latest technologies, that lot of work is happening, it is in virtual reality and immersive learning. That is the augmented reality, virtual reality. So you must be reading lot of, latest papers. If you Google search, you will see that the educational technology domain, there are a lot of paper, lot of publications in these domains of virtual reality and immersive learning. Okay, so now the technology is, just a small diversion. This is what we are, scared of, that students are using technologies and the computers and mobile phones so much that somehow we feel they may, no, they may forget what is a book, right? What is reading, right? Because people are using now more of videos, more of listening than reading. The reading skill is getting slowly, reduced amongst the learner. Now, the second aspect of educational technology is technology of education, right? So here what comes, basically these are nothing but the learning theories, that is how people learn, right? Or how people retain the knowledge, how people gain knowledge. So there are a lot of theories devised by a lot of researchers in this particular domain. And the main three theories that are, dominant in this area are behaviorism, the cognitivism, and the constructivist, right? So each of the theory points to a certain, way that students learn and the teachers teach. Then the second aspect is instructional design. So there are different models that can be used for designing of instructions. Third is the curriculum, right? This is the something which, which is a very important aspect of the education. So in the curriculum, we have these objectives, the assessment, the standards, and so on. And then, recently I would say that, since a few decades, the course structure is also changing. So initially it used to be just face to face. The education was considered like, you go to a school or a college, the teacher is at the center and the students are sitting and you are learning face to face, right? Whereas slowly, the structure is changing from face to face to, we are now having e-learning. Then we have this blended learning, where we are also calling that as a hybrid type of a model, right? So the course structure is changing and the pedagogies are also improving as we go ahead, right? So this is what comes under the technology of education. So these are the three theories, that is the behaviorism, the cognitivism, and the constructivism. So this theory states that learning is a process of reacting to external stimuli, whereas this theory states that learning is a process of acquiring and storing information, whereas the latest one, that is constructivism, which is considered as the most useful or most advanced type of a theory, that is learning is a process of constructing your knowledge based on the previous knowledge. So behavior is a result of testing hypothesis. So this is what the active learning and all, they all come under the constructivism, where we say that we construct our knowledge slowly as we take these different experiences. And then at the instructional design, the three pillars are the curriculum, assessment, and the pedagogy. So when we say instructional design, first thing that we have to find out is what is worth learning, right? So what is it that the student should learn? And then second, how will the students learn this particular content, right? How students learn and teachers teach. And the last, how do we know that the students have learned? So these three are the important pillars of the instructional design, that is curriculum, pedagogy, and the assessment. Okay, so now we have another interaction coming up. So why do you use new technology or new methodology? The technology of education is basically, the different methodologies in the teaching learning processes. So why do you use this? I mean, what is it that, drives this particular thing? So I'll be presenting, okay. So this was the first question on in Mentimeter. Now I will be presenting this question, that is, why do you use new technology or new methodology? So again, I would like to spend a few minutes on this, 2-3 minutes. Why do you use technology? So as a teacher, what do you think? Like, I mean, isn't it sufficient that we are taking our teaching the students in the classroom or face to face, or now we are teaching them in the online mode? Again, there we just set up this type of meeting, say a Google Meet or a Zoom meeting, and where the students are also logging in, they are and we are teaching them, and they are and we believe that they are learning. Whether they are learning or not is a different question altogether. So to improve quality of teaching learning processes, yes, definitely, excellent answer. For effectiveness, to create more interest of students, make more interactive, exactly. Okay, so any other answer? To make them aware about new technology in this new era, to create interest, conveying knowledge in easy way, yes, definitely. Okay, so I'll just wait for 1 more minute. I have again received answers from 6 participants. So are there any answers in the chat? Let me see the chat. Okay. For imagination of the concept, yes, that's a very good answer. So visualizations, we are using simulations and all, so that the students can imagine the things, yes. Okay. Okay, so now I would like to share with you a slide which gives something which is a comprehensive thing. So after looking at, after doing a lot of research, see, basically there are four metrics of using these, either the technology for education, that is the external technologies, or technology of education, that is using the different methods for teaching, different strategies, designing the curriculum in a particular way, and so on. So basically these are the four metrics. We call them as the 2A and 2E. So either we use it so that we make it more attractive for the students, like some of you had answer in the Mentimeter. So in this particular, amongst all these particular answers, if you see, to create interest among the students is, or maybe to make it more interactive, comes under this metric of attractiveness, right? Then second, accessibility. That is the second metric why we use the technology. Then third is efficiency, like you have pointed out here, is to improve the quality of teaching, or to easy way. So basically when we are saying easy, we are basically increasing the efficiency, right? And then the effectiveness, that is the last metric for which we use the technology. So now I will just cover briefly about each of these metrics. So what comes under attractiveness is basically a convenient learning style, because each student learns in a different way. Some students find uh, they are better able to learn it through reading, or maybe some are more they like to hear and learn, some like to see and learn, right? So that is what is the different learning styles. And then make it enjoyable, engaging, simple, convenient, right? Then these are the different parameters that come under the metric of attractiveness, like powerful user adhesion, then multivariate classroom environment, then strong teachers. I mean, the teachers are very good at delivering that particular thing. So it is like all of these comes under what is called as making it attractive for the students or for the learner. Then second is accessibility, right? So basically the technical availability. So currently I think we are facing difficulty in this particular area of accessibility. So a lot of research, lot of work is going on how to make it more accessible for the students. So compliances to standards and so on. And then, like I mentioned, the learning styles. So how we can make it more accessible is by targeting the different learning styles, right? And again, another important criteria under this accessibility is the learning disabilities. So some students have these types of accessibility issues are they are unable to move, or they have problem with mobility, they have problem with hearing, they have problem with the photosensitivity, or they have this some issues like the cognitive abilities and so on. So whatever we put on the website, or whatever we put in the e-learning, it is very much required that we take care of this accessibility problem and take care of these people with special needs, right? So that comes under the accessibility metric. The third is the efficiency. So naturally, when do we say that something is efficient? When we are able to reduce the resources. Now these resources may be either the time, or the hardware, or the software required, or some monetary benefit out of it. So the third metric that we go for the different methods or different technologies is because we want to improve the efficiency. And the fourth is the effectiveness. So obviously this, I believe, is a very, very important metric, because unless your teaching learning processes are effective, the students are neither going to learn, they will not be able to retain the knowledge. And the third, that is, they will not be able to transfer their knowledge in other areas, right? So the learning outcomes of this process, they play a very important role. So now the learning outcomes may be either some knowledge that you are trying to impart to the students, or some skill that you want to develop amongst the students, or some attitude, or some cognitive ability. Now again, these, when we say knowledge, skill, attitude, these I think many of you must have heard about these three domains that we work on, the human beings. That is the cognitive domain, where we say talk about the knowledge, right? Then we talk about the psychomotor, where we talk about the the motor skills and all. And attitudes, they are they come under this emotional aspects, right? Say whether the student is motivated, he is curious, so all these comes under this the emotional aspect of the learner. And then finally, the higher order thinking skills, that are the cognitive abilities, where the students are able to create, they are able to evaluate, we are able to take them at the highest level of the Bloom's taxonomy. I think most of you must be aware of the Bloom's taxonomy and the 6 levels of the Bloom's taxonomy. So this is where effectiveness comes into picture. And how do we see whether it is effective? Basically, we see the scores of the students in some assessments. Either it can be some formative assessment or the summative assessment. There are different, we develop some rubric for measurement of certain skills. So we try to find out whether whatever was our goal or whatever was the learning outcome that was expected has been achieved or not, right? That is what is effectiveness. Okay, so this is a picture which I had devised regarding this the laboratory education. So in laboratory, when we talk about the laboratory, we have two types of effectiveness: effectiveness 1 and effectiveness 2. So effectiveness 1 is basically what the students are intended to do and what the students actually do, right? So that is what we call is as the means we want the students to do something, but the students may do something different. So that is what, if we are able to align these two, that is what the teacher want the students to do in the lab and what students do in the lab, that we can say that okay, it is effectiveness 1 has been achieved. And then what students are intended to learn and what students actually learn. So if we are able to also align these two things, then we can say that we have achieved the effectiveness 2, right? So this is regarding the laboratory, because that is what is my research area, the labs. Okay, so I hope all of you are awake still, even after spending the time with all of you. So I better get an A for staying awake. So some of you might be thinking this, that I think this is again a problem that we face in the classroom and more so in the online learning, right? So many times the student just log in, we see that yes, he is one of the participant, but actually he has just logged in and maybe he's seeing some movie on his mobile, or maybe he's chatting with his friend or doing something else. Whereas, so this is, I would say, it's a funny thing that uh, a person is able to be present at different places at the same time, which was impossible when it was face to face, right? So yeah, so now I want all of you to, again, another interaction. So I would like to all of you to go to this particular link. So I will share the link with you in the chat. So I have created a Padlet for this particular FDP, and I'm sharing the link of that Padlet in the chat window. So have you received the link to the Padlet?
Yes, madam.
Yeah, so now I want all of you to, in the Padlet, I want you to write answer to this question, that is, identify one problem you are facing in your teaching and write it in the Padlet, share it in the Padlet. So is this clear? What are you supposed to do? So all of you are taking classes, right? So you are teaching the students of your institute for different courses, I believe, and obviously it's not something like it's totally win-win for everyone. So I am sure all of you are facing some or the other problem. So I want you to share with me your problem. So you just have to click here, this particular sign here, plus sign. And as soon as you click here, you can start typing. So write the problem you are facing. Okay. Responses from the students in online mode is minimum. Exactly. Student interaction, the attendance is a problem. Yes. So I would say you are not the only one who are facing the problem, right? So I see there are now how many participants? 40. So this is what is a problem, even not just with students, with in any such online interaction. Performance of practical, yes, student focus not there. Connectivity is a problem, yes. So I'll just spend another minute. Reaction of students can be seen. Yes, because there is a connectivity problem. Students will say that we have to spend a lot of money if we have to switch on our cameras when the lecture is going on, and we can't afford that, or students just don't want to attend the class, right? Assessing student in online mode as it is going one way, peer learning is not happening. Yes. Handling students behavior, correct. Yes. Classroom environment cannot be created in online. Totally agree with you, because it's a completely different setup, right? Okay, no interaction. Yes. So that is why I demonstrated the first tool that we use quite often, that is the Mentimeter tool. I hope you all of also aware of this, and this is the second tool, that is the Padlet. So this is how you can at least make efforts that people or your students, they interact with you, they share with you, right? And this is something where they are who is writing what can't be seen. I don't see, no one can see who is writing what. So you are anonymous, right? So you can write something that you actually feel like writing. It's not that it's not like in a classroom that when you are asking a question, many times students don't ask questions because they are they are shy, or they are afraid that their uh, other students will tease them, or they will make fun of them, or they. So this is a very good tool where you can ask your students to write what they you can ask a question and ask them to write the answer, and who is writing what, but overall you come to know whether the students are able to understand that particular topic or not, or whether they are interacting, or whether they are attentive enough that they have understood the topic and answering the question accordingly. So yes, so these are the problems that I think most of the teachers all over the world are facing, right? It's something which is a universal problem currently. Okay, so now another question I'm asking, for which you can answer in the chat. Do you think this problem can be resolved using educational technology? So this you can answer in the chat. Okay, it is very difficult to monitor the students while online lecture. So my question is, do you think that whatever problems you have shared, uh, educational technology can be used for solving these problems? Okay, there is a one yes answer, yes, two, Okay, two people are saying yes. Professor Deepa. Okay, okay. Okay, so a lot of people believe that yes, this can be a solution to the problems. Yes. Okay. So now we come to what is an educational technology research paper. Okay, so now that our the topic of your FDP is research paper writing and so on, now I come to the this particular thing, that is what is a educational technology research paper. Now I will now you must be thinking, why did she ask us about the problems, what is it, how is it related? So that we are going to discuss as we go ahead in the presentation. So what is an acceptable research paper? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the next few examples, present to you the examples, and now you have to answer the question, that is this a research paper? Okay. So I have used colored chalk pieces or colored markers for blackboard and whiteboard respectively for better teaching, especially for waveforms and curves. PPT presentation and blackboard or whiteboard should be equally utilized for an effective lecture delivery. Usage of such methods will make the lecture clear to students. Do you think this particular whatever is mentioned here is a research paper? Do you think that this is a valid educational technology research paper? So what is the teacher doing? He or she, he is for the PPT or maybe for the board using colored colored markers or colored things for the waveforms, etc. And she is saying that usage of this will make the lecture clear to students. So do you think that this is a research paper? So you can answer in the chat. Okay, yeah, great. So the answer is no. Okay, why the answer is no is compilation of obvious or known solutions is not a research paper, even though the idea may have value as an effective teaching strategy. This is a good strategy, but it is not a research paper because it is a obvious or a known solution. So you may have tried effective solutions to improve teaching, but not all can be converted to a research study or a research paper, right? Now, second example. In my course, I explain the importance of the topic prior to teaching. I also explain its practical applications and its usefulness and linkage to the industry. I discuss recent advancements in that topic and current scenario locally and globally. My idea is working because I can read the happiness of on students' faces. Now in online it is even more difficult. You cannot even read that, understand whether the student is happy or not, or whether he has understood it or not. But this is what the teacher does. So do you think that this will qualify as a research paper? So maybe again you can write your answers in the chat. Okay. No. Exactly. This is also not a research paper, right? Why? Because a report of the strategy you implemented is not a research paper, though it may be a good idea. The idea is good. Idea is that you are doing you are taking lot of efforts, you are doing this, you are doing that, right? So idea is good, but it is not good enough to be a research paper. So what you need is details that show why your strategy is unique, or what is it that is unique in your this particular idea. And then you need to establish the evidence that the idea works. You are saying that the students are happy is not a good evidence that the idea is working, right? Okay, now this is again a third example. The purpose of this study is to use Moodle and LMS in an engineering course and study the motivation behind its use by participants. The traditional instructional activities such as presenting information, managing course material, evaluating student work through Moodle quizzes, all were done using Moodle. So instructors were asked the benefits and barriers to using Moodle. So do you think this will qualify as a research problem or research paper? So what the person is doing, he is carrying out a study with teachers on the use of Moodle, and then at the end the instructors are asked the benefits and barriers to using Moodle. So will this qualify as a research paper? Let me see the chat. Okay, I think here people are saying yes. Okay, so now let me share the answer to this. This is again a no. Okay, so why it is a no? Let us see. Use of an ET tool in a routine manner is not a research paper. So what the person has done? See, Moodle is being used routinely by the people all over the world, right? It's open source learning management system. People are using it. Yes. So if you are using it is in a routine manner, it is not a research paper. So what is required? You need to implement an innovative method of using the tool to achieve a teaching learning goal. So whatever you are mentioning here, it is very something which is routinely done. So it will not qualify. Obviously the problem can qualify because the idea is good, right? Of taking a feedback of how the teachers are using Moodle and so on. It's a good idea, right? But what you need to add is innovative method of using the tool. Have someone use something different, right? So now this is the last example that I'm going to put. So I will prepare interactive multimedia content and animated videos, and using Moodle LMS, the student can access the content in order to make the interactive session. The student will be more interested and interactive. Animated videos will be persisted in their mind. The concept will be easily understandable. So again, is this a research paper? So now here if you see, compared to the other three examples, there is something something new which the person is trying to do, right? Like the multimedia, the animated videos and so on. The student will be more interested and interactive, definitely, because we are doing something new and presenting it to the students, and it is staying in the Moodle, right? So again, not yet, not yet a research paper. So in order to convert this idea into a research paper, mere development is not research paper, right? What is required more is to be considered as an acceptable research paper. You need to show that the material has resulted in improvement in student learning or engagement. So see, as a teacher or as a faculty member, you know that if you do this type of activities, if you add this type of material, obviously the students are going to be more engaged, they are going to learn better. But just writing that is not going to be sufficient, but you have to show, you have to provide evidence that the material resulted in the improvement of the student learning, right? So we will again, no, I will just summarize the different points here. So compilation of obvious solution is not a research paper, right? Report of the strategy is not a research paper. So you have used a new idea or a new strategy, but just saying that I have used, it's not a research paper. Again, use of ET tool, you are using a different tool altogether, but in a routine manner, again is not a research paper. Again, mere development of instructional material, the material may be innovative, right? But it is not research paper because you are not providing evidence there, right? So what is a research paper? So now we come to what are the things that the reviewers or the people who are going to give a feedback on your paper to the so naturally you send your paper to conferences or journals or some international magazines or something like that. And when you send it over across, it is a very difficult thing when it gets rejected, right? Because you have taken a lot of efforts in coming up with that, then you have to follow the deadline also. You have always short of time. As teachers, we always are short of time. We never have time for ourselves, never have time for doing such innovative things. And then when you get a rejection, it is really very disheartening. So before that, it's a good practice to know what is a research paper and work accordingly, right? So what the referees look for is novelty, right? So your paper must have analysis of prior work to show that your idea is unique. So the first important parameter that you need to work on is the novelty. So whatever you are trying to do should be something new, right? Second, maybe sometimes you may not be able to find out that okay, this has been done, it's not something like not done, but this has been done, but I want to do it. So then you position your work, right? So you analyze analysis to show that your work is required, how your work advances the state of art. So you need to do the literature review, and you need to find out the gap that is there. You can say that okay, this method has been used, but my what I am doing is totally different. So positioning, that comes under positioning of your work. Now again, say maybe your paper or your research work is not so much novel also. Again, it's not something like okay, you have positioned it. Okay, you say that okay, after a literature review I can say that this is not being done. But again, what matters most is soundness of the procedure, like how you have implemented the solution. So you may have tried something new, which is not completely new, but somewhat new. You have tried to say that okay, this was not done earlier, but this is what I am trying to do. But again, what is more important is how you are doing it. What are the steps that you are using for implementing the solution? So they have to be implemented very very carefully. So there comes the third metric, that is the soundness of your procedure. And the next, that is evidence to support the claim. So you may have implemented the solution carefully, but unless you have the data and the analysis of the data which shows that the solution worked, only then you can say that yes, there is evidence to support the claim. So I am claiming that because I have used this particular methodology, or I have used this new thing, I have positioned it well, I have carried out implemented it properly, and then finally I have also collected the data, I have analyzed the data, I have come to the results, and now I am saying that yes, I have evidence to support my claim that this particular thing works, right? And obviously the final, that is overall coherence. So there should be a consistency between all these four important things, that four metrics, right? So what do you mean by novelty? So it should be new, unique, or original, innovative, or unusual. So I believe it's very difficult to find something unique, because whatever you may try to do as a teacher, somewhere someone in the world, because when you are sending to international journals or conferences, obviously the people who are going to review your work, they are they have done a lot of work in that particular domain for many many years, so they know the what is the current status of that particular area, and so they know what is happening in that field. So it may not be completely original or unique, but there can be something innovative in that, right? So either the innovation can be in the problem, or it can be in the solution, or maybe you are using some innovative thing or something new which has not been tried in your domain. So maybe people have done similar work in civil or electrical or electronics, or computers, but not in mechanical. So you are saying that they have done in other domains but not in my domain, right? So that can be a novelty. What is positioning? It's basically, analysis of related prior work to bring out the gaps, right? So papers that have addressed a problem similar to yours, papers that have a solution approach similar to yours, but the solution to address any of the gaps. So there may be some gaps here, right? So maybe they have done something, but there is something lacking in that, in the either in the problem or in the solution. So maybe, they have tried to do the solution for a smaller classroom. So you can say that because we are working in India, we have my sample size, or I have tried to do this work out this particular solution with a larger class, not a very small class of 20 or 30, but a larger class consisting of 200 students, right? So that is where that is how we can identify the gaps. So that is what comes under the positioning of your work, right? Now obviously when we want to position, we do what is called as a literature review. So this is how you can do a literature selection, because we cannot read each and every article, each and every paper in an international journal or international conference paper. So the literature is, it's like infinite. If you look at the type of publications that are coming up, the number of publications that are coming up, it is like infinite. So you need to and then you have a limited time, right? You cannot read each and everything in that particular area. So you have to do what is called as a selection of the literature or curation of literature. And when you are writing your paper, when you are presenting the literature review, you can write that, okay, this is what is the literature that I have analyzed, and this is the gap that I found from this particular literature. That is, I have, these are the databases that are used, these are the keywords that I have used, and the papers published between these years. And I've sampled around 461. Out of that, I've excluded articles which described only technology. So this is what I had written for my paper. So I'm just presenting this figure to you. Now, after excluding this articles from academic journals were 143, from there I excluded articles which did not have carefully designed studies, and then I shortlisted these. So say 26 from this particular journal, 11 from this, 10 from this, and so on. So my research literature review is this much. So these are the number of papers which I've analyzed, and from where I have found the particular gap, right? So this is a good practice, so that the reviewer also knows that, okay, this is what is the review that has been done. So the third parameter, that is soundness of procedure. So this is the method, so this is the one of the most important thing, that is the soundness. So whatever you are trying to do in your study or in your method has to be totally, it has to be aligned to your research question. It has to be aligned to the gap that you are saying you have found out, right? So step one is implement the strategy in class, then conduct a test to check, and then if the student do well, claim that the strategy works, right? Okay, so now that I have shared with you certain things, again comes the time for the interaction. So let me ask you this question. Are you excited to carry out research in educational technology? So now I'm going back to the Padlet. So are you excited? I mean, do you think that you can do or you can write a research paper in this particular domain of educational technology? So it's not something, something overpowering. It's not something like, you want to find out something which is novel, or maybe like the people in the industry are doing, right? In the research laboratories, where they are trying to find out a totally, new thing in the world of technology. So see, as teachers, even if we are able to solve a problem that we ourselves are facing, right, in our institute, in our classroom, or in our maybe the in our domain, or in our particular topic. Say if you're teaching a particular topic in your course, say for example I am teaching, say in advanced electronics, I am teaching a course on topic in oscillators. So if I have some problem related to my students understanding that topic, right? Say when I am teaching this particular topic on oscillators, the students are not able to understand this concept of say the sustained oscillations. How does that happen? And for that particular problem of explaining or making the students understand this concept of the Barkhausen criteria, how it works, how the oscillations take place, I do something new in my classroom, or something new in my laboratory, or something new in the online course that I am teaching, and I present my results. I devise a particular research question. I say that this is the gap that has I have seen, that no one has tried this method in online, or no one has tried this particular method in a laboratory, right? So I formulate my research question. I carry out a very sound methodology. I carry out a completely well designed and implement that study with my students, and I come to I collect the data and I come to a conclusion, right? So this is what constitutes basically a educational technology research paper, right? So now I'm going back to this Padlet, right? So these are the different problems that all of you have pointed out. So which problem do you wish to solve, right? So you can just maybe write in the chat, or maybe here itself in the Padlet, you can say below what you have written, you can say that, okay, which problem you wish to solve, and whether you want to solve this problem uh, with technology for education or technology of education. Okay. So just I will spend a few minutes on this. So that is why I started with this, the problem, because the educational technology research paper, we have this bottom up approach, right? So first we identify the problem that as a teacher we are facing, and you are not the only one. See, if you see whatever problems you have mentioned here, you are not the only one who are facing this problem, right? But you are teaching a particular course. In that particular course you are facing this particular problem, and suppose now you say that I know the various technologies for education, I know the various technologies of education, and maybe I will be taking one of that, say either a technology for education or technology of education, maybe some strategy or some methodology of teaching, or some tool, like maybe I will use simulations, or I will use visualizations, or I will use a virtual lab for solving this particular problem, right? So this is a bottom up, right? So you start with a problem, you say that, okay, I want to solve this problem, right? And now how do I go ahead in this, right? So this is what I want all of you to do, is share here in the Padlet whether you want to solve your problem using a technology for education or technology of education, and then we will discuss how you can go ahead in that. So it's, I think, 2:39, so I will spend till 2:41 or maybe 42. I'll give you some time to write down, think and write how you think you can solve this problem. And then we will see how to go ahead. So I just want you to write here whether you are going to use technology for education. So do you want me to share that slide? Maybe I'll just present to you the slide, that is what is technology for education. So this is technology for education, that is you are using external technologies like animation, video, audio, simulation, um, latest, that is say virtual reality, augmented reality, chatbots and so on. And technology of education is say some some instructional strategy or some strategy aligned to some theory, or maybe you are going to do some some innovative way of assessment, or having some blended thing, right? So this is technology of education. So just share it in the Padlet. Okay, technology of education, someone has written. So can you specify there maybe below that in the technology of education, what is it that you are thinking? Are you thinking of a different strategy, or some different assessment methodology, or some blended learning or something? So I think many of you must have gone through this different strategies that we use, like the flipped classroom or peer instruction, or say think, pair, share. Like some of you have mentioned already here, peer learning is not happening. So can you, maybe this is a problem that you are saying. So do you think that this particular peer learning problem can be resolved by educational technology, either using some technology tool or maybe using some strategy? This itself is a strategy, right? Peer learning is a strategy which comes under the technology of education. So how do you implement this strategy in the online, in the current situation? Because that again can be a very, very new and a good research paper. Now some of you are saying that performance of practical is getting hindered because of this. So have you thought about virtual labs? So because that is many people are using virtual laboratories. These are the online laboratories. So some aspect of practical education can be targeted using the virtual labs. Then you are saying that student interaction. So now I have already demonstrated you two tools, that is the Mentimeter and the Padlet. So do you think that this particular problem of the interaction or the involvement of the students in your teaching learning process can be taken care of? So how do you do that, right? So I mean, you can say that, yes, I want to do some research in this, whether this can work for my students in my classroom with my particular topic in my course. So this can be a good research paper, right? So you just need to do a literature review in this particular topic, find out who else has used Padlet, but maybe they have used it in some other way. You can say that, okay, I'm going to use the Padlet, but this is how I'm going to use it. Okay, so that can be something new that you are trying to do. I can see some people are writing. It's already 2:44. I don't know. Maybe one more minute I will wait, see if some response comes. So now I believe that if you are complaining about the student interaction and attendance, response from student, I know you will understand yourself, because many of you are also not interacting. So you know what are the problems the students are facing, why they are not interacting, or what problems they are facing, because I believe many of you are facing some problem today, that is why you are not interacting, right? Out of say 40 only, I can see some 10-12 people are interacting, others are not. So obviously you are not doing it because of some problem, right? So So you yourself have answered the question, right? Okay. So I don't see any answers, so I'll just go ahead with my presentation because I need to finish it off. Okay. So this is what we do next. Once you have, identified your research problem, identified your research question, then you do what is called as design your research, right? So you can conduct systematic studies to get the data about whether ideas are working and then provide evidence to support the conclusions. So how do you do that? So research design is basically overall scheme of the research study, like how subjects are selected. Subjects here means the participants, right? So these participants may be either the teachers or the students, right? How many groups you are going to form, what strategies you are going to use for each group, what are the measures that you are going to take, and means how, what measurements are you are going to collect, and how the data that you collected you are going to analyze it. So basically, in ET research, we have seen these 4 types of designs, that is single group, post test only. So here what we do is that the entire classroom, we here I am asking all of you to use the Padlet and share your answers. And then I'm saying that, okay, after my during my this interaction with the faculty members of this polytechnic, out of the 47 or 49 participants, I got these responses, and these were their responses, and so on. So that is what is the single group post test only. And after this, maybe I can share a feedback form with you, having some questions, a questionnaire which you will be answering, and that answers to those questions I will analyze, I will share the results, right? Now the second, it is 2 group post test. So here what we do is we divide the entire class into 2 groups, and then we conduct a post test. Then the third type of design is single group pre and post. So this would be like, before this particular session, I would have taken some survey from you. I would have administered a questionnaire to all of you, taken some answers. So that would have been a pre. And then after the session, I would distribute some survey questionnaire, and that would be a post. So with students, it can be a pre-test. So before taking a particular topic in an innovative way, you ask them some questions, and then after carrying out that particular different strategy, you take a post test. So that is another type of a design. And then the last, that is a 2 group pre-post test. So this is, I think, the strongest of the research designs, but it's a bit more cumbersome, a bit more difficult. But yes, out of these, so again, it depends on how you carry out, how methodologically you do that, how you collect the data, and all those things that matter more when you carry out these studies, right? Now with single group post test only, there is a problem, right? There is no comparison to a group that did not receive the treatment. So this is not a very, very good design. The outcome could have existed even before the treatment occurred, right? So this is not, again, a very good design. So the solution can be either a 2 group post test design or a single group pre-test post test design. So this is not advisable. So we will go with these other 3 designs. So the design one, that is 2 group post test, what we do here, we assign students into 2 groups, right? Implement the strategy with one group, which we call it as an experimental group, and do not implement the strategy with the other group, which we call it as a control group, right? Now or maybe implement strategy one with one group, we call it as experimental 1, and implement strategy 2 with other group, which we call it as a experimental 2. So it can be either experimental and control, or experimental 1, experimental 2, and measure the same variable afterwards. So this is very important. So the 2 groups, they do something, and then we measure the same variable after they have gone through these 2 different strategies, right? and check if the outcome is different for the different groups. So when is this particular design useful? It is useful to show that the outcome happened due to the treatment. For example, it was due to the strategy of peer discussion that students' conceptual understanding improved. So this is the result that we are expecting out of the study. Then things we should worry about here means something that are very important when we carry out such type of a research design, that is, are the two groups equivalent? So it should not happen like, you are dividing the students into two groups, and in one group of the student, that is experimental group, there are all students who are, they are high performers, and in the other group, that is control group, they are low performers, right? So naturally they were different, so after the test also they are going to be different. So before before we form the two groups, we have to see to it that the two groups are equivalent. And then are all conditions for the two groups same except the strategy? So other conditions should be same. And then the third, that is the numbers are large enough, that is the sample size that you are taking in the two groups should be large enough. So optimum, that is a very sample size of 30 in educational research is considered a good number, not a very best number, but a good number. So in each of the groups there should be minimum 30 members or 30 participants. And then, is the strategy implemented for each group valid, right? It has to be valid. And is the post test valid? That is, suppose you are trying to measure their conceptual understanding, is the post test actually measuring the conceptual understanding? It should not happen that you are saying that the conceptual understanding improves, but what you are measuring is the students attractiveness, or did they find it more attractive? That is not equivalent to conceptual understanding, right? So it is very important that they should be aligned. And then how to ensure that the two groups are equivalent is randomly assigning the students. So that is a very good, or matching them, or checking for equivalence. So these are the three things that you can do to see if the two groups are equivalent. Now the second design, okay, so any questions on this particular research design? Do you have any question? Okay, send the link to Padlet again. I think this was a quite old message. Okay. So any questions regarding the research design one? Do you have any questions related to that? Okay, I don't see any questions here. So I will go ahead with the research design 2, that is the single group pre-test, post-test. Okay. So here what we do is we compare the Yes, sir.
Sorry, madam. Sorry to interrupt you, madam.
Yes,
But
yes.
my question was how to correlate the data. That can you elaborate? Means how to correlate this exact means the fourth method which you said, that pre and post in two groups. Regarding my question is how to correlate that data.
Means how do you carry out the data analysis? That is what you're asking.
Sort of thing, yes. It
Yeah,
means
so
before conducting a test, suppose we are getting some result, and after conduction of that test, we are getting some other result.
Yes,
So the difference or the deviation between these two,
yeah,
then
yeah, I understood your question. So I'm going to give you one example of my own research study, and I will be sharing with you exactly how do you do that. Okay, so that will come in a few slides ahead. I'll just complete the research designs, and then I'm going to share the research design of two studies which I carried out myself, and show so you will be come to know how do you do that particular analysis of data, right? So yeah, so as I was saying, this is the pre-test, post-test. So here we measure a variable of interest before implementing the strategy, that is a pre-test. then we administer the treatment, that is implement the strategy, and then measure the variable of interest after implementing the check, that is a post test, and see if there is a difference between the pre-test and the post test. So this is again a very simple design, but very effective design. But what you need to be careful about when you are when is this needed? So this is useful when the students prior knowledge varies and could affect the outcome, right? So here what you need to worry about is, has nothing happened between pre-test and post except the treatment. This is very important. So otherwise, if something happened between these two, then maybe that something has affected the results. So that should not happen. Then are the two tests equivalent, means the same difficulty level? So if suppose you give a pre-test which is very simple and a post-test which is very hard, then we cannot say that okay, and you get a negative result, then you get saying that okay, no, this is not working because the groups are still the same, because the marks they have obtained is the same. So it is very important that you need to check if the two tests are equivalent, that is they have the same topic, same difficulty level. And then finally you need to also worry if the strategy implemented is valid, that is consistent with what was intended. It should not happen like you say that I am using this particular strategy, but what exactly being implemented is something else, right? So that also is very important, that whatever you are saying, you are doing it also. And then yes, like sir was saying, evidence to support claim. So what he was having a doubt regarding was, how do you provide the evidence? Like how do you say that whatever data you have collected, you analyze the data, and how do you now say that okay, this data or whatever result I am getting, it is a evidence to support my claim that there was a change, or there was this particular strategy was effective. So this we do either by the performance of the student in a particular test, or we may also measure the engagement of the student, like student interest, student satisfaction. So there are different ways of finding out the effectiveness of whatever you are doing. So whether you are using a technology of education or technology for education, whatever it is this particular aspect, the evidence is very important. Because otherwise people will say no, it's not a valid research paper because the evidence is not strong. I mean, I don't accept this evidence to support your claim. And many times the research papers get rejected because of this particular problem, that you are not able to show, you are not able to show strongly that yes, it is because of this that there was a difference, or I can say it strongly that this particular strategy or this particular technology is effective. Okay, the evidence is not strong enough, right? So so this evidence that you are going to give in your research paper will be again based on these 4 metrics, that is attractiveness, accessibility, efficiency, effectiveness. So depending on what exactly you want to achieve, what is the goal of your research, what is the research question, what is the problem that you are trying to solve. So naturally, depending on that, you have to provide the evidence, right? So now that so in order to show this evidence, you need to use what is called as an instrument or a tool. So how to measure? I mean, how do you measure this effectiveness? Again, that is, for that you need to have a instrument. So that instrument can be either a standardized test, or it can be you can create your own instrument, like a test question paper with some conceptual questions, problems specific to the research objective, and measure what is relevant. This is very important, right? It's not something that you say something else and measure something else. If that is the case, people are not going to believe in your answers or believe in your results, right? Even we do what is called as a triangulation. So what we do is not just one measure of the effectiveness, we do multiple measures. And with these multiple measures, we say that, okay, because it is, it has affected all the, so you can also have, along with this instrument results, you can also show the results of the regular quiz or the final exam, right? Sometimes that can be a, triangulation efforts. So it just to make your claim stronger, right? So when it comes to student engagement, what do you measure? The student perception of their own learning, whether their satisfaction, interest, attendance. So this again you can measure, like when it comes to student engagement. And how do you measure that? How do you measure the perception? By giving them a questionnaire and having structured interviews. Again, here, why two things? Why we are giving a questionnaire as well as an interview? This is what is we call it as a triangulation. So just giving questionnaire may not be sufficient. So you are, have providing more evidence by giving the results of structured interviews also, not just a conversation, but some interview questions you ask them and you analyze that data that you collect. You do this content analysis of the data that you collect through the interviews, and then you say that, okay, through these, so out of, say, maybe you interview 10 students, out of the 10 students, 5 students have said this in their interviews, right? So I can say strongly that because of this, that it is because of this strategy or because of this technology, this data is relevant and it is my evidence is strong, right? Okay, now before going into this ethics, I think I will share with you one study that I carried out with the students to answer the question that sir had asked. So this is the exact study that I wanted to share with you, sir. So this is one study I carried out with the students. So what is the impact of experiment designs? So like I mentioned, my research area is in virtual labs, and I have developed guidelines for faculty members to design experiments. Now, when I say that these guidelines are good, or they are, they are useful for the teachers, or they are, effective, when can I claim that the guidelines that I have devised for the teachers effective? If the teachers who have used these guidelines and carried out some designs, and those designs are given to the students, right? The students do or perform experiments which have been designed using the guidelines, right? So here in this study, what I have done, I have tried to find impact on students' learning of the through these experiment designs, right? So what I did was, this was a 2-group experimental study where I tried to measure 2 dimensions, that is the reaction and learning, right? So I formed 2 groups, that is, one I called is as a control group and experimental group. So this was a pilot study because the sample size, if you see, it is very small. It is just 19 and 20, right? Because this was again not a mandatory thing for the students, but I had asked the students to volunteer for this particular study. It was a very long study. So for that, I had to ask the students to volunteer for the study. Again, if you ask the students to volunteer, it removes some of the bias associated with the attractiveness, because even if you say that if you make this particular thing mandatory, then it is it creates, as it is, it creates some bias, right? So I made it a voluntary thing, and whoever volunteered, I divided them into the experimental group and the control group. Now what I did was, so this is a figure which illustrates the methodology or the research design. So here what we did was, it was a course in basic electronics, the control group students 19 and experimental group 20. So here they used the virtual lab with traditional lab experiments. So here they were given the experiment designs which the faculty member normally use without using my guidelines. And this is the experimental group. They perform this experiment using the virtual lab, but the experiment designs were using the guidelines, right? So only thing that is, if you see in all this methodology, if you see, the only difference is this traditional lab experiment and the dynamic lab experiment. So this is without the guidelines and this is with the guidelines. Everything else, if you see, the data collection was same, that is post-test score survey. Here also I did a post-test score survey, right? And then here, because this was an experimental group, I also collected extra data of these experimental group student, that is the student interviews and this is what is we call as the triangulation. So I did student interviews as well as screen capture videos, right, for both the groups. So the data gathered was student scores in the post-test, student scores in the learning outcome test, student scores in the pre-test, post-test, the screen capture videos of a few students, students' responses to the survey questionnaire, and students' response to the open-ended questions in the interviews. So why I am collecting so much of data? So if you see, mostly, if you carry out this educational research, it is a good practice to collect data on different parameters. Like here I am doing not just the pre-test and post-test. So I am also collecting data of their learning outcome test, which they give while they are performing the experiment, right? Then also I do a screen capture of the videos of how they are performing the experiment. And then at the end of end of this, I also give them a survey questionnaire to collect their responses, and then interviews also. So all this, together makes my, the evidence that I'm going to share at the end of the results, it makes it stronger. So that is why, my chances of getting the paper rejected, or the chances of getting paper accepted increases and rejection decreases. So the independent variable is the instructional strategy, that is use of dynamic manual, right? That is the only difference between the two groups, right? And the dependent variable is coming from all this. So how it has affected all of these parameters, right? So the instruments, so these were the different instruments that I have used: pre-test question paper, learning outcome test questions, the post-test, survey questionnaire, interview question, and then obviously rubrics to measure the learning outcome. Because learning outcome here, when it comes to the laboratory, it is not just, you cannot just judge from the pre-test, post-test. We also need to find out how to measure the learning. So we also devised a rubric for that. And yes, so this is, I think this is what will answer your question, sir. So what I did was I carried out an independent samples test before for the pre-test. So I did a pre-test with both the groups. The two groups were found equivalent before they used the virtual labs, right? So this is what is the test that I carried out from the data collected. And I found out this signature two-tailed value was 0.162, which is greater than 0.005, which says that the two groups, they are equivalent before they use. Though there was not a statistically significant difference between the two groups before they perform the experiment, right? And then in the post-test, again, I've measured the same thing, right? And I found that the significant value was 0.002, which is much less than 0.005. So now I can very strongly claim that there is a statistically significant difference between the test scores, right? The post-test scores, there is a statistically significant difference. And so I can say that the students who carried out the experiments designed as per the guidelines performed better than the students who were given the experiments without the guidelines, right? And again, analysis was done with the survey. Now, is this sufficient to say this? So what I did was I triangulated my results with the questionnaire data. So here again, I asked them certain questions to both the groups. You have to ask these same questions to both the groups and analyze it. So if you see here, the percentage agreement of the students is more in the experimental group than the control group, right? So they say that it has improved their understanding, data analysis, problem solving, and so on, right? And then next, the analysis of the recorded videos. So when they were doing this experiment, I recorded the videos and analyzed their videos, right? So the time required, average time required for performing the experiment, if you see, is different here. For experimental, it was 72, and for control group, it was 45. That was the actually, it was meant that the students work on the virtual labs for more time. They do more activities in the virtual labs, right? So with the control group, that is the experiment designs by traditional method, they were spending less time. So naturally, their skills were not getting developed, the learning outcomes were not so strong. Whereas experimental group students, they were spending more time with the virtual lab, right? They were doing more activities. So naturally, their performance was better. And this is what they were the different types of tasks they did, right? So there were in experimental group, the type of tasks they were doing were, so if you see, this is again a very comprehensive analysis that was done for both the groups from the recorded videos. So how they are spending the time. So they have spent more time. So in what are the activities that they are spending the time. And this is again the 56 minute, this is again an analysis of the task that they did. So if you see, this is the these particular thing shows that what exactly they were doing, right? Connecting wires, connect wires, reading error messages, so edit properties. So this is for the experimental group. So most of the time they were doing certain things which can lead to the outcomes, learning outcomes, and not certain things which are not going to lead to the outcomes, right? Whereas here, if you see this picture itself is showing you that, okay, so many activities they are doing, here they are doing less of activities, right? So again, this is the same, that is the experimental group and control group, the recorded videos. And so, this is what are my results. So students who carried out experiments designed as per the guidelines perform better. And so I can say that there was an impact on the students' learning because of the experiment designs. So I hope this has answered your question, sir.
Yes, madam.
Yeah, so this is how, you provide a very, very strong evidence to whatever you are claiming. So if the evidence is strong enough, if you are, providing evidence in different ways, not just the scores of the students, not the final year marks. You cannot say that, earlier batch we did not use this strategy, this year we use the strategy, and that is why they perform better. That will be a very, very weak paper. So unless you do what is called as a triangulation, so you need to collect a lot of data. So that is why, data analytics, learning analytics is coming in a big way. AI and learning analytics people are using in a big way in education as well. This is how, this learning analytics can play a very important role when it comes to educational research or educational technology research also. So you collect data from different, things, you analyze that, and then you carry out this statistical different, use statistical methods, and then because just saying that, okay, the average score of the pre-test was less than the average score of the post-test, again it's not a significant result that you can say very strongly, right? So there has to be a statistically significant difference, only then you can claim that yes, my whatever I am doing, it is supporting my claim that yes, this is what is a novel method, this is what I have done, this has been effective, and this is useful, and so on, right? Okay, so there is something written in the chat. Interpretation of results may vary person to person. Sir, but there are certain, guidelines on what should be, there are, systematic methods of how you can interpret the data, or what are the, the analysis that you should do for the data. The data will be, data may be same, yes, like you said, the interpretation of results, if you are doing it very systematically, if you are following the systematic methods, and then and if you are doing this, what I said, triangulation, you can converge to certain interpretations which majority of the people will agree to, right? Yeah, for interpretation, literature will help, or maybe yes, there are a lot of lot of research has gone into that also, like how do you interpret the data or how do you interpret your results. So again, you have to literature review is something which you have to keep on doing till your paper gets published, because every now and then you will find something different, and someone will say something otherwise. What is there in your mind, you are convinced about it, but someone else may say no, 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 this is not the fact, you need to cross check. So again, you do a literature review, try to find out what the majority of the people are saying or what is working, and so that is how strengthens the work, strengthens your research, right? Okay, so it's 3:15, I suppose, so we have still 15 minutes. So I'll just present to you one more research study that I did. This was, so the previous study that I presented was with the students. Now this is with the faculty members. Like I mentioned earlier, this are the slides from my presentation in this ICC, which is a very reputed international conference, which is conducted every year all over the world. Some means the location keeps on changing. So in 18, it was held in Manila. So the research question that I was trying to answer was, what is the effectiveness of the experiment design guidelines in improving the quality of the design, right? So do the guidelines improve the quality of the design of the experiments of the virtual labs? So this is what was the research question. So what I did was, this was a field test I did with 10 engineering instructors from Mumbai University, and each of them, they designed 4 experiments. So there were total 40 experiment designs that I analyzed. So the data collected was the instructors' experiment designs before and after using the guidelines. So there were 10 participants and 40 experiment designs. And then I designed a rubric to assess the quality of the experiment designs, because this is more of a, this is more of a qualitative type of a study than a quantitative, because here I was more worried about the quality of their designs, whether their designs were of good quality. So for that I had to design a rubric. So this was the methodology. So the engineering instructors, 10 participants were there, they designed 4 experiments. So the data was collected, total 40 experiment designs were collected, and the analysis was rubric to assess the quality. So this was more of a qualitative data analysis, and grading was done for each of the experiment designs based on the rubric. So rubric was again having almost 20 to 30 different parameters in the rubric as designing for the design of the experiments. And this is what I found out. So these are the overall quality improvement was 80%. So 30% of the experiment designs improved from low to medium quality. So out of the 40, if you see the 4 experiments, they remained low at a low level. The quality was low. Then 30% improved from low to medium, 30 from low to high, 20 from medium to high, and 20% from high to high. They stayed at high level. Okay, so there was no degradation in the quality. So this is one thing which was good, that none of the experiment design quality was went from medium to low or medium high to low and so on, right? So this is again faculty wise. So faculty 1 to 10, how their experiment designs were before and after. So high to so before it was high, to after it was high, then that way, right? So the findings were that the experiment design guidelines are effective in improving the overall quality of the experiment designs. I also took a survey with the teachers. So those results I am not presenting, because this just I'm presenting you the results of the experiment design. I also gave them a survey questionnaire on the usefulness and usability of those guidelines. So those were other metrics that I tried to find out besides the effectiveness, which I measured through their quality of the designs, right? So I believe there were some more slides to be presented on examples of good educational technology research studies that were carried out by my colleagues at IIT Bombay. So I'll just show you a few examples here. So example 1, how we teach impact student learning, that is peer instruction versus lecture. Okay, so this was a research question. So this is how was the abstract that was submitted. This was a paper which was accepted and published in this SIGCSE. This is again a very, very reputed international conference. So if you see, the precise problem definition is the one metric, novel solution approach, sound procedure, and evaluation of solutions. So these are the 4, like we were discussing earlier, that is the novelty, the positioning of the work, the soundness of your method or the procedure, and the evidence, the soundness of the evidence. So if everything is, together it looks good, then the chances of rejection are very, very low. So if you work on these 4 important things that matter to a research paper, I believe you are good to go. You are good to submit your paper. The second, again, if you see here, the importance of the problem. So this was a problem which was a very, very novel problem. So very few people had targeted this problem of the spatial structure of organic molecules amongst the chemistry students. This was again a very, very novel problem that was being addressed. The solution approach was also a bit novel, because they were using instead of the physical 3D molecular models, they were using the computerized 3D models, and this was the evaluation was done using organic compound questionnaire and then the evidence, right? So yes, so all these 4, if you take into consideration, again this was published in ICLS in the year 2000. Okay, so there are a lot of such examples from my department that I can cite here, but for the lack of time, I think I will take you to the last few slides that I have to share with you. So how do I ensure that my ET research paper meets the criteria? So for that, in my department, we have taken a lot of efforts, my HOD and other faculty members and even my colleagues, researchers. They have come up with a systematic, methodology of how you can publish a very, very good educational technology research paper. So it has 3 stages, that is the planning, conducting, and reporting, right? And for each of the stages, if you see, there are templates that are provided. So this is the idea planning template. This is the study planning template. So in the planning, you have to use these 2 templates. So these 2 templates, if you use, you are taking care of the novelty and positioning and soundness of the procedure. Then even this conducting of the research, there will be this intervention plus analysis. Again, here we have these template which you can use for supporting the evidence, right? The supporting evidence for your claims. So this template you can use so that you provide a strong evidence for your claims. And finally, we have this paper writing template. So once you have used these templates and written a lot of things, I think it's almost like your research paper is ready. So you just need to put whatever you did in these 3 templates, you just need to add it to your paper writing template, which brings about what is called as a coherence. That is a final stage, that is bringing everything together, right? So you use this paper writing template and your research paper is ready, right? And all these resources, so these are the 4 templates that you can use: the idea proposal template, study planning template, paper planning template, and the paper writing template. So all these templates are available on this particular URL. So now I will take you to my department, that is the ET department at IIT Bombay. I think some of you may have already visited and using these resources. So if you see, so this is the home page. So if you are struggling with your online sessions, there we have, come up with a very good resources here for going online during the COVID, moving from classroom teaching to online teaching. So these are again a comprehensive set of tools and technologies and methodologies that you can get tips on, right? And regarding the resources, we have these teaching online resource, we have ebooks, handbooks, and then research resources. So these are the resources that I mentioned earlier, that is the study planning, idea proposal, and so on. So these are the different templates, and there are some videos also that are given here which you can go through. These are some videos by faculty members, Sridhar Iyer sir and Sahana madam. So you can also use these resources, and there are also teaching resources. So these are also some very good resources. So suppose you want to implement a particular strategy, like I was mentioning, say peer instruction or some active learning strategy, say use some visualizations in your classroom or use think, pair, share. So there are again these templates on how do you go about implementing those strategies in your classroom teaching, whether it is face to face or online teaching, right? So this is about my department. And yes, so any questions? So finally, I want to share 2 important things as I am part of this IEEE Bombay section. I am a chair of these educational activities at IEEE Bombay section, and we are very soon hosting this very prestigious conference, that is TENSIM 2022, which will be in the month of July, that is 1st to 3rd, which is going to be held in the VMCC IIT Bombay campus, that is the Victor Menezes Convention Center. And the last date for paper submission is 1st February. So now I will take you to the TENSIM website. So this is the conference. So call for papers. If you see here, we have a track on see if you see here, this novel education technologies in the new normal. So if you are planning to do some research in the area of education, educational research, educational technology research, you have opportunity to send in your paper to TENSIM, and you can use these resources, right? The research resources that I just mentioned. It's not very late. Still it's just December, and you still have 2 months of carrying out your research work and writing your research paper and then submitting it to the TENSIM conference. There are obviously other international conferences as well, but why TENSIM? Because I'm a part of that conference, and yeah. Besides that, we are also hosting this first Teachers Congress of IEEE Bombay section, which will be in January from 28th to 30th. So this is in line with the NEP 2020, that is what I mentioned at the beginning, that is empowering the teachers, right? So empowering the leadership, empowering teachers as leaders, teachers as, so this is specifically designed for young teachers like all of you. So there will be workshops, there will be panel discussions, And this is the link for the registration. So maybe I will share it in the chat window as well. So this is this is a congress under the leadership of Dr. Saurabh Mehta. He is from Vidyalankar Institute. He is the secretary of IEEE Bombay section, and Professor Dr. Kiran Talele, who is in the Sardar Patel College of Engineering, a very senior member of IEEE Bombay section, who is a treasurer here with us. And I'll share this link also in the chat for the Congress. So you can register here. I will also share the link of the conference here with all of you. So that you can just go through the website and see if you want to be a part of this. So you can either come to Mumbai in July, or maybe both. You can come to Nashik in January and be a part of this wonderful congress, which is the first time that we are hosting, and the conference also after many years we are hosting in IIT Bombay. Okay, so that's all from my side. So thank you for your patient hearing and active participation. I hope I have completed on 1 minute late. Yeah, that's it. Okay. So now I will stop sharing my screen. Yeah.
Dear participant, do you have any question? It was marvelous session. Because we came to know many methodologies what you used in your IIT Bombay. So if someone doesn't have any question, then we can conclude our session. Should I proceed now? Okay. Good evening all. We have experienced a marvelous session by Dr. Anita Divakar ma'am. It was a great pleasure to understand critical points regarding measuring effectiveness of educational research. It has certainly given another outlook towards the research work. Even she has given good example about immersive learning and different learning strategies, tools like Mentimeter and Padlet tool. I'm sure that all participants have enjoyed today's session. On behalf of Organizing Committee of Mechanical Department, A.G. Patil Polytechnic Institute, Solapur, Maharashtra, I acknowledge the valuable contribution of today's expert person, Dr. Anita Divakarji. I would like to thank you all the participants who have attended today's session from Google Meet and Facebook Live page. Feedback and test link will be shared on WhatsApp group after 30 minutes. With the permission of all the dignitaries, we would conclude today's session. Tomorrow, again we meet with the new topic, with the new topic and new speaker. Thank you. Have a good day ahead.
Oh, thank you, madam. Thank you,
Thank you, ma'am.
Professor
Thank you.
Devanshi. Thank you, Kulkarni.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all the participants, for being here today. I would leave the meeting now.
Yeah, okay. Thanks a lot.